it's kind of hard, right? When people show up, you show them like, yeah, check out the $96 million investment. And they look around the parking lot. You spent $96 million on a parking lot?
Well, that's just a data point that water's invisible. It's like, yeah, it's not sexy, it's invisible. How can people get excited about it?
Everybody gets an A, but there's a catch, right? You got to keep revising and keep doing it until you get it right.
Okay, well, hello and welcome to the stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarney, a water strategy consultant and investor doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And a big shout out and thanks to all of our knowledge and impact partners for season 5 and also our sponsor from Spain, Acciona Agua. And today we are delighted to be joined by Sunny Wang, who is the Water Resources Manager for the City of Santa Monica's Department for Public Works Water Resources Division. I think I got that right, didn't I, Sunny?
That's a mouthful. Yeah, you got it right, Tom.
Well, it's always good to start strong. Well, firstly, thanks for joining us. I have to admit, you are looking pretty dapper, as we would say here in the UK.
Apparently, I did not get the memo. To be more casual, well, thanks.
Loving the sports jacket, but yeah, great to see you. Also, always enjoy chatting to you, mainly because of your stunning backdrops you use in virtual calls, right? Which is the one of the beaches where you are, the Santa Monica beach.
It's actually the main reason why I came to work at the city, so I could sit at the beach all day.
Very smart man, very smart, Sunny.
There you go. Keep promoting the cause, and then in every bit of communication. So, Sunny, we've got lots we want to sort of chat to you about today. But I think where I would like to start is you have a really significant role in the city of Santa Monica at a sort of water utility, but actually you came from a consultant background and you made the switch to the utility. So can you tell us a bit about kind of that turn of that career and what led you to that?
Yeah, so I always thought I was going to be a career consultant. I started out when I was in school, I wanted to be a consultant. That's all I wanted to do. A lot of people, my colleagues, thought I was going to be a career consultant. So I was consulting for about 17, 18 years until one day I decided to make a change on the public side. They're both personal and professional reasons. The personal reason was my son, who was 2 at the time. I was, torn a lot between traveling. Do I pick up my son? I remember sitting in the office sometimes like, oh, do I write this one last email or do I run to pick him up? Or he's always the last kid picked up. So from a personal standpoint, I wanted to make a change where I'm around home more. Given that I live in Santa Monica, I thought it'd be great to work in Santa Monica. So the opportunity kind of came about where the city, who used to be a client of mine, reached out to, hey, we got this great opportunity. Are you interested? And I jumped on that opportunity, also at the advice of some of my clients who said, hey, as a consultant, you just come in, you design a treatment plan, you finish and you go. You never stick around to make sure if it works or not. It's all shiny when you're done. But the real challenge is being at the front lines and making it work. So I took that advice to heart, and I always thought, wouldn't it be great to work in my own backyard? And I've worked on City of Santa Monica's projects. I helped build the water treatment plant 15 years ago. It was the first MTB remediation plant in the country at the time, where I learned a lot. I went from pilot testing to design and starting up the facility. Learned quite a bit. And Santa Monica always has a special place in my heart, especially because I live here. I thought it'd be great to just jump in and take the opportunity to see where that goes. And it's 4 years in now. It's been pretty amazing to be on the other side because you really get to set the course of what you want to do, from budget, direction, and how to achieve the goal, what type of projects implement. So it's been an eye-opening experience for me thus far.
And Sunny, you touched on something I think is really important. It's sort of universal in the world of consulting. And, I've been a consultant forever, that, you can understand a client's needs, you can make recommendations, and then it's up to them to execute on your recommendation or reject the recommendation, depending on, what it is and the client and so on. And just having that satisfaction of seeing something built and executed must be incredibly rewarding.
And also appreciation of how long it takes, because as a consultant, you come in with the RFP, with a project to find or to design something, right? But having been a part from planning and coming from ideas just from city council and execution from just the budgeting phase. Where do you get money from? How do you afford this? Through planning, then design, then construction, now starting up. You're right. Well, it is very rewarding to know that you kind of charted that path and see it from fruition. And I guess the career consultant is why I'm wearing this coat, I guess. And when I see a meeting, I slap on a coat.
Well, that's good. At least you're not driving to the airport and traveling somewhere. It's
Yes.
Put on the sport coat. We're good. I like it.
So the rewarding is since I worked on the city's drinking water plant 15 years ago, I'm very proud to always tell people that I drink the water from the treatment plant I design. I think very few people could say that, and it's also comforting for our residents that I drink the same water that they do day in, day out. So I always take a lot of pride in that, and that's probably one of the most rewarding things I've had in my career, is being able to drink that water every day from a treatment plant that I worked on.
I guess you feel much more connected to that asset or that piece of infrastructure as well, right? As you mentioned, when you're a consultant kind of speccing out designing water treatment plants elsewhere and then moving on, you're kind of, okay, that project was a certain chunk of years of your life, and then you kind of move on, but actually you're based in the area that's from the treatment plant you've actually designed.
Yeah, I would say that treatment plant has been pretty much with me my whole professional career. That I started working on that treatment plant back in like 2006, right? And it's producing water now, and that's one of the plants we're upgrading today. So it's being updated and upgraded to take on another first of its kind. As we talked about before, right, Tom, the technology where we're looking at is flow reverse osmosis. That might be the segue of or the theme of our talk today, is all these mouthful catchphrases. So the flow reverse or reverse osmosis is going to be the first in the United States that we're going to be implementing. It's a game changer, I think, to increase recovery of RO. It's a great treatment process, but the Achilles heel has always been the amount of brine that it produces. So with this technology, we hope to get it up to 90% or greater recovery now. So we're very excited about that. We're moving towards that, and we're 15, 16 years beyond the initial upgrade of that treatment facility. So we're very excited about that.
That treatment facility you mentioned, Arcadia, you've referenced it in previous conversations as kind of the beating heart of the city's water supply. But this is part of a wider self-sufficiency basically for the city of Santa Monica to become water self-sufficient, and Arcadia is one component of that, right?
Yeah, definitely. That is, like you mentioned, the beating heart. That's at the central of our master plan. That treatment facility provides all of our local groundwater. And we're looking to increase, right now, supplies about half of our water supply. We're looking to increase that to about 60, 70% or so of our total water supply. With additional groundwater, we're remediating, as well as with this technology that we can squeeze more out of that groundwater without having to pump more as well. So we have other projects, from potable reuse, groundwater remediation, to high recovery RO. A lot of those are first of the kind of industry. That's also the reason why I came to Santa Monica. I thought, well, either I try to bid on it as a consultant, I may win or I might lose, or I could just go there and work on all of it, right? I don't have to worry about bidding and not losing in these projects. So it's been great from that standpoint too, is coming here and working on state-of-the-art, first of its kind projects. And with our city leadership here, they're not afraid to be the first. They challenge us actually to be the first, especially on sustainability and combating climate change. So we're very, very proud of these projects we're implementing.
Sunny, are you also looking at groundwater recharge for storage?
Yes. Yeah, so one of the other projects is our potable reuse project, which is fascinating in itself. All these projects, I think, deserve at least 30 minutes of their own time, right? We don't have so much time. That potable reuse project started with the idea of, you see the image behind me, the Santa Monica Bay. It started with reducing pollution into the Santa Monica Bay. How do we harvest that stormwater, divert that urban runoff, which pollutes the ocean? So it started with, let's divert away from the ocean. Then what do we do with this water? Do we just send it to sewer? Do we try to treat it for beneficial reuse? So it evolved into a stormwater harvesting, dry weather urban runoff project, to a potable reuse project where we're mixing stormwater with wastewater. And the interesting fact that I tell a lot of people is stormwater is actually harder to treat than wastewater. We're actually using wastewater to dilute down stormwater, because all the heavy metals, the oil and grease in there is hard to treat. So people always ask us, why would you throw wastewater and stormwater together and muck up the stormwater? Like, no, it's the other way around. We're actually taking advantage of the wastewater now.
That's really interesting. I mean, that makes perfect sense that there's this, view that stormwater is clean and, compared to wastewater. Yeah, interesting strategy.
The Achilles heel in our stormwater is actually PFAS. I know that's the hot topic of the industry right now.
Oh, right.
We found loads of PFAS in our urban runoff. We don't have any heavy industries. It's mainly just from people's everyday use, believe it or not. That's in the street that gets flushed down the storm drains that we find the level of PFAS we're seeing.
Oh wow! Just from basically the stormwater passing through the environment is enough for without even industrial sites, enough for PFAS to kind of get in there.
Yeah, so it makes you think about like the pervious pavement, the spreading of stormwater, because the amount of PFAS that's in there, it may not be something you might want, because it may end up in your groundwater supply that way. Right.
Really interesting strategy.
So back to your question about the groundwater recharge and potable reuse side, that project involved into a underground facility. So we built a 1.5 million gallon stormwater harvesting tank, a 1 million gallon per day advanced water purification system with a membrane bioreactor, cartridge filter, RO, UV advanced oxidation, and free disinfection. All of that is buried underground. We're going to be the ribbon cutting for that's in 2 weeks, so we're very excited about that, because it's kind of hard, right? But people show up, you show them like, yeah, check out our $96 million investment, and they look around like, that's a parking lot. You spent $96 million on a parking lot?
Well, that's just a data point that water's invisible. It's like, yeah, it's not sexy, it's invisible. How can people get excited about it?
I joke with people that if you want to come see how we bury 96 million, well, come on out.
What lies beneath, right?
Yeah, that's actually one of the titles we're thinking of. We're like, well, is that a good title? Because the word lie. They don't think this, there's always people against government, so we can't use the word lies. People think we're lying.
You can imagine the connotation, not physically lies, but actually, you've got to be quite careful on the wording on that.
Right.
We may use that for the title of this podcast, Sunny. Who knows? I mean, we won't use lies, but we'll craft something clever.
So, Sunny, you during your before you got your role in Santa Monica, you actually spent some time in the UK.
Yes.
So tell us about that. I mean, is there anything you miss? I mean, I'm glad you're probably looking at the headlines at the moment and look back and think I probably was glad I went when I did and not right now.
Well, I wish I didn't. I almost wish I went now with the exchange rate.
Yeah, I mean, there are some smaller benefits, but yeah.
I still have money over there that's worth nothing now. I lost 50% overnight.
It will come back, hopefully. Yeah.
I think I missed the pub culture, the lifestyle over there. People just seem to enjoy life and take a moment, stop and enjoy life more often, I think, we do in the States. But I also learned, there's things I took back too. I also came back vitamin D deficient. I don't know if I ever shared that with you, Tom. The lack of sunshine that I got. My doctor was like, what happened to you? In the 2-3 years I haven't seen. I was like, well, I was in London. There wasn't a lot of sun. So I came back a little vitamin D deficient. So I had to take a supplement.
No way. Oh wow. Yeah. Well, I guess there's
appreciate the beach and the sunshine.
Ongoing joke about London. Well, UK weather as a whole, right? That it's kind of sunny for 2 weeks of the year. So it makes sense. But yeah, sorry, I can see why you gravitated back to the Californian coast afterwards.
Hey, Sunny, I guarantee that is not the answer that Tom thought you would deliver in terms of what did you miss? Yeah, well, who would have thought?
Yeah. Well, it was a very eye-opening experience over there, too. It's a different culture, different country. I think what I learned professionally is it's all about the rules and procedures. The British are very orderly. They have rules for everything, procedures for everything, which is great because, for every engineering problem, we have to figure out the root cause first, which I think is something we always forget sometimes. I think as engineers, especially in consulting, we automatically get into solution mode. We just want to solve problem, but sometimes we don't know what the problem is. We're just trying to solve and speed up and work really fast to finish the project. And I really appreciated taking the time and defining what the root cause is to make sure the problem is solved before going too far into it. The other thing I learned is the privatization, design, build. Originally, no offense, Tom, London wasn't my first choice. I thought I was going to go to Australia. because I wanted to work on seawater desal projects. But then London came about because my wife was sent there for her work. So when we ended up going there. But what I learned a lot was design build. Although I want to work on seawater desal, which was the thing in Europe at the time, or at least in the UK. But I learned a lot of design build. I think I did 10, 12 design build projects in 2 years.
Wow.
So quite a bit. And as the US market design build's kind of taken off now, it's really good experience I could draw on when I was over there as well.
Well, I guess the kind of the discipline from that market, and also the asset management periods, the AMP cycles, and what you can learn from actually working in that environment and then translating it when you're back in the US over the Atlantic, must be quite a few skills. But you've mentioned in the past about kind of the measurements on imperial metrics and how I can see why that may have come as a bit of a surprise moving back. Yeah.
There was two things I was most challenged with the work over there. One was the English spelling. So they had to tell me to switch my spell check on my word from American English to proper English.
So you missed all the Z's, right?
Yeah. For example, like stabilization, I can't use a Z or Z. You use an S. Right. So I had to change that at first because everything I was getting back was getting redlined by my boss. Like, what is this? It's like rubbish. The other thing is the metrics. Everything is SI units, so I had to do extra conversion. Right? The equations I'm used to using is not valid, and I always have this back and forth with my colleagues, and they give me crap because I'm American. Like, you guys use English units, but well, you guys started it. We're just maintaining, and we're committed to it. So some of the challenge we saw was like if you replace a valve or a flow meter on an old pipe, the bolt pattern is based on inches, but the valve or flow meter you're buying is in millimeters. So you have to buy an adapter plate in between the two. So it matches up the inches on this side and the millimeters on this side. So you can slot in that new valve or flow meter. Like, that's genius, whoever decided this. You just make a plate. You make a fortune off of this.
What can I say? We can't shrug off the kind of the imperial way of doing things. I think we're still trying to, join Europe in terms of the metric measurements, but actually, just think about like the football analogies, like the 18-yard box. We still we can't get away from these kind of imperial references, I think. So I can see why when you're trying to match the two of those from a work context, it can,
Or the use of stones. Like when you ask people how much they weigh, like, oh, this many stones. I was like, I have no idea what that is.
I know, right? Stones, and then feet for height as well. We're very kind of set in our ways. We don't want to give it up, I don't think.
Yeah, I was very confused on when did I do what over there at the time. Did I do this or did I do that?
Hold on to it, Tom. It's endearing.
Really. We need something right now, Will, right? So I'm not going to let go of the imperial way of doing things. One of the because I remember having when I was editing WWI magazine, do all the conversions and try and get everything consistent to cubic meters. So about 1,000 liters, so many thousand cubic meters a day. So obviously you had gallons through to liters was pretty easy, but actually the one that used to throw me was looking over the pond to when you guys are using acre feet per year. Yeah, just. Still, when I read that, I'm like, what's like the origin story behind acre feet per year? And actually trying to translate that back was always a bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest.
That's how efficient we use our water here.
Right.
Your feet came with an acre of land, you flooded 1 feet deep to irrigate your crops.
Well, there's so much truth in that, in terms of this perceived abundance of water that you can just flood an acre, and hope for the best in terms of, water retention in crops and so on. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I have to remind a lot of our residents and people here are, the kids we interact with, students, that we live in a desert. California isn't meant to be the metropolis it is in. It's it happened by accident, sort of. But we live in a desert. We're not supposed to have the population or this green lawns and growing all these crops for out here. So it's just kind of crazy how you see the area develop over time.
Do you think, because when I look at it from a distance, obviously you mentioned the city leaders and kind of governors in the past have always been quite progressive, and I remember kind of looking at what Orange County was doing with the groundwater replenishment scheme and how that was kind of ahead of its time, and then Singapore has kind of adopted from it. But do you think that's part of the reason why California's always been perhaps, and Will, no offense against Colorado or other states, but California's always been pretty progressive when it comes to kind of environmental policy, doing things ahead of their time. And even when it comes to PFAS, you hear about the utilities moving more quickly than actually the federal regulation on that.
Were you going to make a comment, Will? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we're having this like country tension here, or a state tension now. So
I didn't mean to kind of
accept you now, Will, instead of me and Tom.
I never thought I would encounter this at 8:30 in the morning. My goodness. No, but Sonny, I just wanted to agree with Tom that in the U.S., California has always led for decades on environmental issues. And for the most part, the rest of the country follows through, federal laws, whether it's, remediation of Superfund sites, water quality, air quality, pivot commitment to EVs, whatever it may be. So, what you do in Santa Monica and what you do in California, has a pretty significant impact on how the American West thinks about water scarcity and moving water to, circularity and all that. So I thought I'd tee you up, Sonny, in violent agreement that yes, California leads.
I agree. I think there's interesting things. If you guys remember Chrome 6, the regulation, EPA was trying to establish a level for Chrome 6, and California went ahead and decided to put their own MCL, which is much lower than the federal limits, but then they got sued and then had to roll back that Chrome 6 limit to where it is now. They basically were too aggressive in establishing those Chrome 6 limits ahead of federal. So that's one of the few instances I think where it was challenged. But generally, yeah, you're right. I think California, we do lead like what we do here in Santa Monica. We're trying to establish a roadmap, a model framework for other cities that could potentially follow with our plan to be water self-sufficient. It's a pretty aggressive goal to go from, right now we're importing about 40% of our water supply. So to make up that 40% with wastewater, stormwater, impaired groundwater, dry weather, urban runoff to get to 90% or greater, it's huge. It's not cheap either. Although I will say we're fortunate we started construction of all of our projects in the early days of pandemic. It seems like a bargain now what we're paying 2 years later, where all the costs sits right now. But working in California also has its advantages, being on those front edge of environmental policy, because I remember when I was in the UK, I was asked to write recycle water regulations and policy for a water utility out there. And I was like, oh, this is easy. I'll just copy the Title 22 stuff.
You took it right off the virtual shelf, right? I love it. So, Sonny, to that point, I mean, California is coming to grips with the fact that surface water availability is drastically reduced through the impacts of climate change. We're mining groundwater in an unsustainable manner. How does, a city like Santa Monica that really wants to be at the leading edge, bleeding edge, transfer that knowledge elsewhere in the state? And, I know there are a number of programs, but can you talk a little bit about how you share information with your colleagues to sort of float all boats?
Yeah, so first thing, well, a lot of our funding requires us to get the word out there. So we have to do it as part of our money we receive too. But we go out to conferences, we present. But in terms of establishing a model for others, what I was referring to, for example, on the stormwater front, urban runoff, our project, the Sustainable Water Infrastructure Project, has a component where we're treating stormwater to a level where you could directly inject that into the groundwater basin, which currently there is no regulation. So we spent a year monitoring the stormwater quality to establish if it's what origin it is. Is it a wastewater origin, or is it surface water origin, or is it its own category? And how do we treat it? What are the regulations? So we spent a year monitoring that. We work with the regulators, Division of Drinking Water, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board to look at, well, what's in there? how do we treat it and what treatment requirements are needed. This is all ahead of them developing regulations. So now that has become something that another utility could follow if that's a project they choose to implement in their area. And that's where we found all that PFAS. Nobody ever thought to go looking for and monitoring PFAS in the urban runoff. And we found a lot, and we had to develop a treatment strategy for it.
That is wild.
So they're trying to think of other instances on the impaired groundwater side as well, where the MTBE facility I mentioned of Arcadia, that was first of its kind 15 years ago. You know, there wasn't really treatment requirements and standards for that either. So we worked with the regulators back then to establish that. And now we're restoring another impaired groundwater supply that's contaminated with 1,4-dioxane. We have one of the, I want to say, the highest removal efficiencies of 1,4-dioxane in the country with our UVAOP system. UVAOP is not new, but we're achieving nearly 3 log removal of 1,4-dioxane, which is about 99.9% removal of that compound, which is much higher than you see on the potable reuse side, where they only do 1.2 log removal. So we're almost 3. Lots of energy, lots of peroxide being added to get there. And a part of that too, we're also currently working with the regulators to update their policy on groundwater remediation and for low threat closures, because we feel it's a bit outdated. It's been 10 years and the reality of our water supply is not the same it was 10 years ago. So we're asking them to update that policy. We actually have a conversation with them later this week. And we're going to be making public comments at the regional board as well to try to align the regulation to the reality where we could restore groundwater basins to its natural state so it's not contaminated. So agencies could pump and use as drinking water. And we don't have to put that cleanup on the ratepayers' backs. That the responsible party should be responsible for cleaning up the contamination that they caused.
I think it's kind of several examples of where, you know, as a state, as a city, you're kind of ahead of the curve of the regulations of actually from a federal level to lead and share. But do you think, because often the city speaks about this one water approach, and you mentioned about making sure you're communicating with your stakeholders and public as well, and do you think that kind of helps disseminate everything you're doing to kind of the lay person on the I was going to say on the street, but actually on the beach behind you?
That's actually probably you talk about moving to the public side. That has been one of the toughest challenges, is trying to explain all the stuff we're doing in layman.
Right.
I get told all the time by our staff here, like, Sunny, nobody's going to understand what you're saying. Nobody knows what a membrane bioreactor is. Nobody knows what reverse osmosis is. So how can you, explain it in a manner that a 5th grader can understand? So that's kind of what we've been told.
That's a great challenge, and it's a significant challenge, but a great opportunity. I mean, Tom and I often talk about how do we get out of our silo as professionals, and how do we communicate to the layperson so they understand the value of water, the technical challenges, the options that are available, and some things that are not available in terms of ensuring that, a city like Santa Monica or a state like California can continue to have, vibrant economic development in the face of really a changing water system.
I think the advantage I have on that front is I have a 6-year-old at home. So I go home.
Oh, that's awesome.
Explain it to him to see if he understands.
I love that. So you kind of do the 6-year-old test, right? Can your 6-year-old understand it? And then in which case we have something to communicate.
That might be the adults sitting there in an after-school care program with 5 kids sitting around, right, explaining to them. That's my brainstorming process. I sit there with him and his friends to see if they get it.
It's a pretty good test, right? I mean, Will, do you remember we had Kelly Trott on from Imagine H2O?
Yeah.
When she was talking to a lot of the startups and the founders who sometimes get so kind of ingrained in their tech and their solution that you need to, and her words were like, explain it to me as if I'm your 5-year-old daughter or son or grandchild, right? And then suddenly they're just simplifying it and getting the solution across much more quickly and better.
We really need more of that. Just pretend the person you're speaking to knows nothing about the topic, and how do you bring them into our world to solve the challenges that we face with respect to water.
Yeah, the other side of this is we've been, at least I've been told, is you only got 30 seconds. Right there, whoever you're trying to explain the topic to, you only have their attention for maybe 30 seconds. You got to put it in layman terms. So like, go. That's all you have, right? So it's a skill and something I'm still trying to learn and get better at to explain this to our residents. I spend a lot of time with our residents explaining their rate structure. Why is their water rate structured that way? How their water is treated? Where does it go? Where does it come from? Yeah, I spent a lot of time in public meetings to try to refine that part of my arsenal, I guess. Because no matter how great a thing as I could build, if I can't explain it to our residents, it doesn't matter.
Right.
They're the one that's going to be using it and they understand this stuff.
And Sunny, do you find that the community, at large, and this is probably an unfair generalization, understands the challenges that a city like Santa Monica has, and Southern California at large with respect to water? Basically, what has changed and how do we manage that change?
I think it's tough for residents to understand. I think they understand there's a drought because they hear it so much, but do they actually feel the impact of a drought? I don't know, because water still comes out of their tap.
Right.
They don't have to go to rationing. We have outdoor water restrictions that a lot of people, they understood, but they kind of complained about at the same time. But I think we're kind of spoiled as residents up until there comes a day where you turn on the faucet and nothing comes out. You really appreciate that resource that we have.
It's still, I don't want to get into the whole pricing and value thing, but it's relatively low cost compared to other services and goods that you get. And it's always there. I mean, we're incredibly fortunate in that, for the most part, you turn the tap on and you not only have water, but in general, it's safe to drink. So, what's this thing called the drought? Why should I care? I don't get it.
Water is dirt cheap, I think. No matter where in the States,
Sunny, great. Yes, it's dirt cheap. It's either free
There's
or
no dirt in
cheap.
there, though.
No. It's safe.
Disclaimer.
And Sunny, maybe we should use the word, it's relatively inexpensive.
How
about that? Not cheap, inexpensive.
Yeah, and I'll tell you guys a funny story. Being how progressive Santa Monica is, at our one of the public outreach meetings during our rates, I showed up to the meeting with a 5-gallon water jug, like the water cooler ones you put over it, and I have 4 pennies in there. That's essentially the cost of 5 gallons.
Wow.
4 pennies. But you know what they said to me? Where did you get that plastic bottle? You're not allowed to have that here in Santa Monica.
No way.
They were giving me a hard time about the plastic bottle and not about the value of water. That's what the whole conversation went.
Sunny, that is so California. It's priceless. And I will say that as someone from Colorado. Well, next time you're just going to have to use a PowerPoint slide, it's be safe.
You know how hard it was to find a 5-gallon jug in Santa Monica? I actually had to go outside of Santa Monica to LA to get one.
Wow.
Hey, I'll send you all the PET you need from Colorado, Sunny. Just, the friend in Colorado sent that. I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Very good. So, Sunny, kind of finally, you mentioned there about kind of speaking to school children, but also you have a role at the University of Southern California in terms of teaching water design. Tell us a little bit about that in terms of how you see that as part of your kind of role over there in Santa Monica.
So this started on several fronts. It was kind of I'm a strong believer in fate. So I think over my whole career, in terms of the opportunities, the mentors, even meeting you two, I think it's all fate that brings us together. And it was actually at I think it was the Clark Prize Award, which is one of the research prizes given to the highest, I guess, somebody in the water research field. It was at that. It was Dr. Amy Childress. She's from USC. She was talking about hiring an adjunct, and I was just standing behind her. I was like, "Oh, I'll do it." I just turned around and says, "Hey, I'll do it," because she went to school with my grad advisor, who's Eric Cohen. And so she's like, "Really? School starts in 2 weeks." I was like, "Okay." So that's just how the whole story came about. How I started teaching at USC was they wanted somebody from the industry that has practical knowledge to come teach their water treatment design course. And they were struggling, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, overhearing Amy's conversation with another professor at UCLA, and that's how I got the gig at USC. And I really like teaching because it's, for me, it's giving back. I had a lot of great mentors, a lot of great teachers in my career that I feel like I need to pay back to the industry or pay it forward, as I tell a lot of my students. And then it became a recruiting gig. I used to hire at least one student every year that worked for me in consulting, because you vetted all the students, you know who's good, who's a slacker.
Wow.
Right. And then, but now it's a lot of it's also for fun, as I joke with passing down the pain. One of my professors, Dr. Wistrom, his design class was, you got to do it till you get it right. So engineering, you can't just get a C and design a bridge that's a C, right? Or work 70% of the time, or water treatment plant that's only going to meet your water quality 70, 80% of the time. So he had the philosophy of, you got to keep it right. So that's what I make my student do. Everybody gets an A, but there's a catch, right? You got to keep revising and keep doing it until you get it right and get an A.
Okay, I think you found the title of this podcast, Passing Along the Pain. Sunny, that is brilliant.
You almost need a dot, but everyone gets an A.
Yeah, plus everybody, well, they hate me actually during the class. I would say the majority of my students actually dislike me during the class, but a lot of them come up to me afterwards, after they graduated, to thank me. They're glad that they got exposure to what the working world is like, what the real world, we keep telling them, is like. So they really appreciate it now, but during the time, it's kind of like, growing up, your parents nag you, they tell you things like, whatever, that's not gonna happen. But it does, and you learn from it, and you appreciate your parents from telling you that.
You mean the kind of the famous "I told you so," right?
Yeah.
They come back and see you a few years later, so I kind of told you this would happen.
I think all the engineers that ever worked for me feel that way. They hated me when I'm their boss, but they appreciate it when I'm no longer their boss. There's only a few that comes back and want some more pain.
Isn't that a sign of like a really good professor or teacher or mentor? Is during the process of the mentoring, whatever, you kind of like, okay, they're busting my balls here, but actually when you look back, you think at the end of the process you came out much better and stronger as a kind of result.
But every year, I think at USC, every year I get the review. I'm like, oh man, I get fired this year for being too hard on the students. But that's actually why they hired me too, is to give them a little taste of that. Like I remember a student asked me, well, not asked me, she told me. She's like, Professor Wang, do you know how many units in this class? I'm like, 4. She's like, yeah. Do you know how much work that equates in terms of like hours per week? That we do work. I was like, I don't really care. Are you ever going to tell your boss that you're only going to work this much? Like, I don't have enough hours to get the work done. Or is that what you're going to tell your boss?
Sonny, I think I'm ready to audit your class. I mean, I'm not going to go for an A, but I want to see you in action.
Do you have 2 spare seats at the back? We can just come and sit in for the sitting.
Well, go on Zoom. I'll give you guys a link. You can Zoom on in.
There you go.
Oh, can we?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take you up on that.
Yeah.
I'm being serious, and I'm not an engineer, Sonny. So I'm a groundwater guy. It'd be great.
Yeah, we would love to have you if you want to speak on one of them too.
Oh yeah, sure. There we go. Sonny, Tom and I always talk about like what's the action item or action items after a podcast. I think we have a few here.
Sit in Sunny's class to feel the pain.
Yes, I like it.
I think there's a sharing of knowledge. Yeah, we'd love to just to kind of sit in there, and also I think see some of the questions and some of the way the students are looking at the future of water design and how you're shaping that. I think that would be great.
Yeah, the thing we're teaching in that class. Yeah, the thing we're teaching in that class is regarding our living building, which the city has. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the living building concept. It's essentially an off-the-grid building. Mm-hmm. Right, you have your own energy, own water, no waste, all the stormwater, everything's managed on site. So we have a water treatment plant in that building. So that's what my students have to design. We have a building like that here in the city that that's completed now. We're just retooling the water treatment plant system underneath the building right now to get it permitted, so we can get our certification. But that's essentially what they have to design.
I love it. Okay, yeah, send the link. Sign us
up.
Go.
Let's get it booked in the diary. Love it.
Yeah, happy to speak. Happy to. I'll get a lot out of sitting in on your class.
It's free of charge. for the first lesson.
I love it.
Do we get an A as well? No, I'm kidding.
You have to work for it, Tom. Have you not been paying attention this whole
You can't just turn up for one class.
I-
Hey, I went to Sunny's class. I got an A. Aced it. Yeah, fine, cool.
No, you got to feel the pain, Tom. Come on.
Yeah.
Feel the Sunny pain, the wrath
Yeah.
of Sunny. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get an A if you leave the class crying.
I have visions of all sorts of T-shirts with taglines on it. So I think you could run with this. Spread the pain.
Very good. Cool. Alrighty. Well, listen, Sunny, thanks so much for tuning in. I know it's pretty early over in California time. And for giving us an update. Yeah, interesting to sort of see your origin story from sort of consultant to utility from the UK to the US. And yeah, I love the work you're doing in your sort of professor role. I think, you've got decades and amazing experience to kind of present to students that are going to be water professionals of the future. So continue doing what you're doing, and also encouraging to see Santa Monica keeping, pushing the envelope along with the rest of California.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me this morning.
It was great. Awesome.
Great stuff. Alrighty. Thanks, Sunny. Appreciate your time. Thanks, Will. It was always a pleasure. And yeah, we'll be in touch and look forward to tuning into that class in the coming weeks.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care,
Alrighty.
guys.
Thank
Take
you, guys.
care.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.